Hello dear students of class 10. Here we are again with our lessons, and this is the 5th chapter from your reader, the first flight. Now this is another chapter and I am sure it's going to be a very interesting one for you all. Now before we read the text, let us read a little bit of introductory questions here. How do we judge the people around us? By their money, wealth and possessions? Or is there something of more enduring value to look for in a person? Is there a value, an enduring value that you see in a person, or you just look at the superficial things, that is money and wealth or the possessions that people have? How do you judge those who are around you? This story is a sensitive account of how a poor young girl is judged by her classmates. Wanda Petronsky is a young Polish girl who goes to school with other American children in an American town. These other children see Wanda as different in many ways. Can you guess how they treat her? Now let's read the information in the box. We will find out more about this community, or that is the Polish community. Polish community are the people or the people who immigrated from Poland to USA. So this is, so let us see here. You can find out more from the internet. I know you can, if you're interested, you can go to the internet and find out more about them. The first Polish immigrants arrived in America in 1608, but the largest wave of Polish immigration occurred in the early 20th century, when more than 1 million Poles migrated to the United States. The Polish state did not exist at that time, and the immigrants were identified according to their country of origin rather than to ethnicity. They were identified as Russian Poles, German Poles and Austrian Poles. So they did not have an identity of one country, but they were identified as the people of their people of the country of their origin, that is from where originally they were. So they were Russian Poles, and they were German Poles, and they were Austrian Poles. One of the most notable Polish American communities is in Chicago and its suburbs. So Chicago is sometimes called the second largest Polish city in the world, next only to Warsaw, the capital of Poland. Polish Americans were sometimes discriminated against in the United States, as were the Irish, Italians and the Jews. So you know that there a lot of discrimination still goes on, and the so-called you say free countries, and a country like USA that welcomes everybody. It's almost like a melting pot, but yet there are people who still discriminate against the immigrants, especially the Polish immigrants and the Irish, the Italians and the Jews. So people have faced a lot of discrimination there. According to the United States 2000 census, 667,414 Americans of age 5 years and older reported Polish as the language spoken at home. So many people speak Polish at home, their language, which is about 1.4% of the people who speak languages other than English, or 0.25% of the US population. So these are the figures that tell you that there are quite a number of Polish immigrants in USA, and so you can find them, especially as it is written here, you can find them mostly in Chicago. So it's called the second largest Polish city in the world, only after Warsaw, that is the capital of Poland. Now let's go to the text here. Today, Monday, Wanda Petronsky was not in her seat, but nobody, not even Peggy and Madeleine, the girls who started all the fun, noticed her absence. Usually Wanda sat in the seat next to the last seat in the last row in room 13. She sat in the corner of the room where the rough boys who did not make good marks sat, the corner of the room where there was most scuffling of feet, most roars of laughter when anything funny was said, and most mud and dirt on the floor. Now, Wanda uh, did not sit in the front seats, as you can see, and nobody noticed that day on Monday when she was absent, not even the girls who made fun of her, that is, the two girls, Peggy and Madeline. They were not there. I mean, sorry, they did not notice that she wasn't there, and they started all the fun actually. And Wanda usually sat in the back of the room, that is room number 13, and she sat where most of the rough boys sat, the boys who did not want to score good marks, the boys who were always laughing, the boys who there were roars of laughter, as it is written here. And so when anything funny was said, they would laugh out very loudly, and they would create a bit of disturbance in the class. And that's also the place where there was a lot of dirt on the floor, though, so it means there were rough boys sitting there, and surprisingly Wanda, a girl, used to sit there. So there was a lot of scuffling of feet, as it is written here. Scuffling of feet means noisy dragging movements of the feet on the ground. Sometimes when you make noise while you walk, the teachers tell you to lift your feet properly and walk properly. So that's a lot of scuffling that used to go on there in the back of the class. Wanda did not sit there because she was rough and noisy. Now, that's why I said surprisingly she sat there with the boys, but she didn't sit there because she was rough and noisy herself. On the contrary, she was very quiet and rarely said anything at all, and nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. So, on the other hand, she was very quiet and she rarely said anything. She would just remain quiet all the time. Nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. Sometimes she twisted her mouth into a crooked sort of smile, but that was all. So, sometimes there was a little semblance of a smile on her face, a crooked smile, but that was all. She never laughed out loud. She never smiled with her heart. It was just a crooked smile that she sometimes did, and that was all. Nobody knew exactly why Wanda sat in that seat, unless it was because she came all the way from Boggin's Heights, and her feet were usually caked with dry mud. But no one really thought much about Wanda Petronsky once she sat in the corner of the room. Now, so the writer here wants to uh, draw the reader's attention to the fact that she sat in the back of the class. There was a reason, because she came from Boggin's Heights and her feet were usually caked with dry mud. So it means she came from the muddy part of the town, which means Boggin's Heights was not a very posh area, just a very, very ordinary area. And so her feet were always caked with mud, means all dried up mud would be there on her shoes. But nobody noticed. They did not think much about her, and they just didn't care for her. Nobody cared for her once she sat in the corner of the room. The time when they thought about Wanda was outside of school hours, at noon time, when they were coming back to school, or in the morning early before school began, when groups of 2 or 3 or even more would be talking and laughing on their way to the schoolyard. So the time that they thought about her or paid attention to her was when she would be coming to school or going home, or they would be standing in groups, and then they would see her, and they would make fun of her. Then sometimes they waited for Wanda to have fun with her. So they would wait there for her just to have fun with her. The next day, Tuesday, Wanda was not in school either. So the next day either she didn't come, and nobody noticed her absence again. But on Wednesday, Peggy and Maddie, who sat down front with other children who got good marks and who didn't track in a whole lot of mud, did notice that Wanda wasn't there. So now Peggy and Maddie, they sat in front of the class, and they would with children who got good marks, and they didn't have that they didn't have dirty muddy shoes, And then they noticed that Wanda still wasn't there. Peggy was the most popular girl in school. She was pretty. She had many pretty clothes. Her hair was curly. Maddie was her closest friend. So Peggy was the most popular girl because she was very pretty and she came from a very good family. She had pretty clothes and she had nice curly hair. And Maddie was her closest friend. The reason Peggy and Maddie noticed Wanda's absence was because Wanda had made them late to school. Because of Wanda, they were late to school. They had waited and waited for Wanda to have some fun with her, and she just hadn't come. So they were blaming Wanda for making them late. Poor girl who wasn't even there. And they blamed her that they were late. Why? Because she waited and waited and waited for her and she never came. They often waited for Wanda Petronsky to have fun with her. So they waited there. They often did that. And so they were late to school that particular day. That is why they noticed that she was absent. All the other 2 days they did not even notice that the girl was not there. And today when they waited for her, they found out that their classmate wasn't there. The girl who sat in the back of the class with muddy shoes, with rowdy rough boys, the quiet girl was not there. So we will end here today. We'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.